Hello, everybody. My name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. Timestamp is we've just gone past 12 p.m. UK time on Thursday, September the 18th. I've got nothing specific that I want to announce. I will get straight into the questions. Marvin 1891 is first up, says hello James, hope you're doing good. Start one in game week 5. Vandenberg away to Fulham, Rangers away to Arsenal, Adarabioyo away to Manchester United, or Josh King home to Brentford. Thank you. Gosh, I get the sense from the community anyway, just a few bits I've seen on social media, that we're going to be looking, people are going to be looking at a lot of benching headaches this week. It feels like, I think possibly the Arsenal Man City fixture is quite a bit of a consequence of that. Maybe a few others as well, such as United against Chelsea and Everton players playing away to Liverpool. Yeah, tough one that. I mean, you could toss a coin between the four of them, I think. I think if I had King in, I'd chance it. But he only played an hour against Leeds, just about made it to the 3-pointer, I think. Could easily have been a 1-pointer. That would be my instinct because I think that's possibly got the high ceiling. But it also feels like almost the most likely to be a blank from them as well. Rangers at Arsenal, it's not one I'd regularly leave out, but I think Arsenal away would be acceptable. Can't say I'd fancy Vandenberg or Adarabioyo, particularly for clean sheets, actually, this weekend in away fixtures. Adarabioyo wouldn't be a DEFCON anyway, although Vandenberg probably will be. Close. I think I'd go King, mate. Harry Baker says, hi, James. Start one of, here we go, another one. Start one of Truffer, Grealish, or Paquetá. Also, any thoughts on Chelsea performance versus Bayern Munich? Thought we were decent, but worried about United's quick turnaround. Chelsea, I'll hold back on because I'll cover that a little bit more on the weekend tomorrow with David. But I essentially agree with your sentiments, Harry. Yeah, I thought Chelsea played okay, actually. Fatigued towards the end, and it became straightforward from 3-1 onwards. But yeah, I thought Chelsea played all right, actually. In terms of your one start, Paquetá, mate, Pens. Not Pens, mate. So that one feels very straightforward. Jack and Whittle says, hi, James. Planned a bench boost in game week 5. Due to injuries, it's ended up Darlow, John Arias, Josh King, and Emmanuel Agbadou. Because of clash to correspondence, I'm concerned with minutes, but still want a bench boost to get it done to get Arsenal players in 7 easily. Well, as you've got Wolves and Leeds players and they're playing each other, although that's not necessarily ideal that they're playing each other, I certainly get the sense that obviously there's strength in all of them and it's a decent home fixture for King. There's two sides to this story. One, there's a small chance here that none of them start. We're assuming Lucas Perry is out and Daniel Farke's press conference is later today, so we should know in a couple of hours. John Arias, I would expect to start. I mean, there's probably a correlation in the sense that he didn't play the Manchester City and Newcastle games, but probably does come back in the team, 70%-ish. Similar with Josh King, probably 70 to 80% for a start. And although Bradley thinks Agbadou should possibly come out the team, I suspect he'll probably stay in it. So I'd probably proceed, Jack, with a little bit of caution that don't expect a monster return from that lot. But yeah, there's every chance you'll get the 4 starters out of that. And if you do, 1 return will do you, won't it? CM Punk 2310 says, bench 1, Porro, Williams, Anderson, Konsa or Goodmanson. You probably want to take Jack's line, mate, and consider bench boosting. You may have already done it. I don't know what the rest of your team looks like. Yeah, all decent defensive options this week. Bench 1 from that. Probably Goodmanson, I think. I think order on that for me would probably be Anderson, Porro, Konsa, Williams, Goodmanson, but there wouldn't be a lot between any of them. FPL Borat says, hi James, after watching Ange Ball last night, I'm tempted to bring in Jadon Anthony for Bruno, I presume Fernandes, and captain him. Wildcard game week 6 or 8, so wouldn't hold him long. Thoughts? Have I lost the plot? I wouldn't say you've lost the plot. And if you were committed to game week 6, I'd understand it more. But it also probably wouldn't be the one that was screaming out to me as a 1 week punt. And ultimately, I don't think you can convince me about captaining a Burnley player. Remember as well, the Forest that you watched last night, and I certainly accept I didn't watch it, but I heard that Forest essentially played pretty well. We just threw it away at the end. The Forest team had 10, 11 changes last night, so you got another whole new team, which will be more like the team that played at Arsenal at the weekend. So be a no for me. There's every chance Zinchenko will come into the team and Nico Williams will play right back. That's probably better defensively up against Anthony, so strong no from me, mate. CM Punk says Pat Matasar or Bergvall as a rotation option with Dewsbury Hall. Anyone else around 5 million? No, we're not kind of lavish with choices around about that price. I'd say Sarr over Bergvall, but I wouldn't particularly go for either, I don't think. Stack at Leeds, another option. Tyler Adams be decent for Defcons at Bournemouth. There's not huge amounts of options just scanning through teams at that price. Xhaka, he's doing well for Defcons as well, kind of in and around the bracket of Tyler Adams. Yeah, there's not huge options there. So I understand the Tottenham punt. I would say if you've got wild card in hand, I don't mind going for Sarr, but even with that, there'd be a consciousness with those two players that they've both played basically the whole games of the last two. Is it Paulini or Bentancur +1 at Brighton? I would suggest possibly yes. I would say Sarr would be the more likely starter than Bergvall under that circumstance, but there's clearly a little bit of rotation beginning to happen. Some of the other names I mentioned, such as Adams and Xhaka, are less thrilling, I understand, and also probably not what you'd... They're more... Adams and Xhaka are kind of like players just play them anyway, like Anderson or Caicedo. So they're probably not really parts of rotations. Also, you'll want to... Whatever you get, you'll want to use this week. I'm guessing as Dewsbury Hall goes to Liverpool. Then you probably next want to use it kind of game week 8. Tottenham and Villa. I mean, to predict now Sarr or Bergvall starting in game week 8, we don't even know if the longer term plan might be to move Simmons into a more central area. Probably avoid for me. The honest answer is the options down at that price bracket are not particularly great, mate. Not particularly great. I'd be tempted by Adams, but not for a rotation purpose, just to play. So I'd go King. I'd go King at 4.5. You can use that this week. It's not ideal for game week 8. But maybe that extra 0.5 will allow you to set up with a stronger fourth defender, for example. I'd probably look at that route. FPL Ishak says, "Hi James, how are you, mate?" Yeah, good. Good. No complaints. Team's winning. Not thrilling at the moment, but doing well. Much improved defensively. Little man's well, wife's well, mum and dad's well. I'm well. Yeah, good. Thanks for asking. David T says, "I've Strand Larsen and Utara and 2 free transfers. Planning to bench boost in 5. Reckon I can gamble on Dango starting. Feels very possible." Yeah, it does. This is an awkward one. Utara's really awkward. I've done a piece this morning for our advanced tier patrons, be out later today, on the tactics from the Brentford-Chelsea game. It's no relevance to what's next. It's just tactics on the game. But I did reflect on it afterwards and think that system with the back 5 that they played at the weekend worked quite well. They had a very specific structure around Thiago man-marking Caicedo in the first half. It had to break down a bit in the second half because Maresca switched how Chelsea played in the second half. But it did get me thinking about how Brentford had done in their previous 2 away games and lost them both, right, at Forest and Sunderland. So don't think we could rule out the idea that it could be a back 5 again. And under that circumstance, I would expect Sade and Thiago to be the front 2. Not sure how we'll play it. Not sure. You're probably looking at the Brentford team this week being a toss of a coin between who starts between Utara and Pinnock, which is extreme, right? But it depends probably on the system from that perspective. Larson, I think, is probably going to be a bin. Again, see what Vitor Pereira says, but unless you're confident he's starting this week, which it seems unlikely based on the messaging last week, I think it's probably going to be a bin. Wait on the team news. There might be different ways you could flip it about. Maybe downgrading Utara to some of them players we'd mentioned, maybe even to like Josh King, and then spread the money later on. Obviously Larson up to maybe Chris Wood for 2 weeks or so. Evan Nilsson, maybe a little bit longer. A few different ways of doing it. My instinct would be at this moment, Utara probably does start, but keep an eye on what Keith Andrews says. It was a back three against Villa as well in the cup, but obviously the personnel was quite different. FPL Borat says also, is Suj taking FPL seriously this year? His team actually looks like it could do something. Yeah, it's still well behind me, Dub, isn't it, mate? Well behind Nico as well. Hello, Nico. Shout out, mate. He captained Semenyo last week, did Nico? Well done. Is Suj taking it seriously? Does Suj ever take it seriously? Do I take it seriously? I'm way more into making sure the content's decent, right? Rather than the FPL team. I mean, look at me. No Salah, no Haaland, no Palmer. I'm potentially about to die here, aren't I? Yeah, he is, but it's not the most important thing in his life, clearly. Demetrius G says, bench one of Porro, Concert, Anderson, Williams. They feel like, yeah, CM Punk asked that question earlier, and I kind of listed the order, Demetrius, so that question you've got 4 of the players he had, so that'll answer that. CM Punk 2310 says, what do you think about taking hits this season considering double chips and AFCON transfers? Should we hold back or be more aggressive? So I wouldn't necessarily relate it to the chips. For example, you might have already used most of your chips. Some people will have, free hit 2, bench boost 1, wildcard 4. Maybe planning triple captain 6. So the relevance of that to AFCON transfers turning up, what's that, game week 16 or so? There's no relevance on the period in between, right? I just think ultimately it's more the rolling of the transfers means that where possible, I would prefer to avoid them. But if the right solution in front of your face is to take a hit, take the hit. If you're sitting there going, I've got 2 injured players, and I can bring in Haaland and Palmer. Bring in Haaland and Palmer, right? Get it done. So I'm definitely not bugged. I would prefer not to take them if I can avoid it. But if the right conclusion for whatever I have is, I've got to take a hit, and this could be me next week, I'm going to do it. So I'd rather avoid it, but it's more about the rolling and the transfers than any consequence of the chips, I think. Billy Taylor says, yo, Jaylins, my daughter was born last week. Congratulations, Billy. He says, so I haven't been able to concentrate much on FPL, but I'm not far off the top 1 million. Do you remember if your rank suffered or improved when you had Harry? Wow. No. No idea. The main thing I remember about that season, which would have been 18-19, so Harry was born in November. The main thing I remember about that was wildcarding quite late in the December period, just before Christmas, and I gambled really heavily on Pogba, Martial and Rashford just after Solskjaer took caretaker charge, and that did really well. I had quite heavy Tottenham, had a decent December as well. I had some decent Tottenham coverage in there as well. We won like 6-2 at Everton. Pretty sure I think I had Sonny, but I didn't have Kane. Sonny got like 20 pointer or something stupid. So that's what I remember really from that season. But actually, how well was I doing at November? I wouldn't have a clue, mate. Couldn't have told you if it was top 100k, top 2 million. I've no idea. No idea. It will be somewhere in the archives of the podcast, mate. Andy Martin says, morning, mate. Do you still think it's too early to rely on certain players for DEFCON, or do you think the ones that have achieved it so far will continue? Case by case basis, I think. So, Senasai looks strong, but it doesn't feel as secure moving forward as Tarkovsky feels very secure. Just from the DEFCON perspective, I'm not talking about starting. Just from the DEFCON perspective. The likes of Adams, Anderson, Casado will be very consistent and in and around. I mean, Anderson's hit it once, right? But he's been so close in all the other times. So I think there are certain players that you could look at and say, yeah, very consistent. There may be a few in there that might feel more like anomalies because of certain fixtures. Like I mentioned on Monday's pod about the centre-backs at Wolves and Brighton both picking up DEFCONs in defeats away to Bournemouth. And I don't know if it's more of a Bournemouth thing, right? And I did say we might kind of lean our mindset to be thinking a little bit more about that sort of thing moving on. Again, it's 2 games. It might be that Bournemouth play Newcastle at the weekend, the Newcastle guys get nothing, right? But maybe there is a little read on that so far. But I'd say those who are doing best so far will probably continue. Van Dijk is an interesting one, who's done quite well on it so far. I think he might be just behind Casado for actual DEFCONs. I think he's actually going around on the bottom ticker. You'll see it at some point. That one, again, feels like I'm not sure if that's going to continue or not, because Liverpool's fixtures obviously not at Burnley, but the three previous were really tough opponents, right? So I'm not sure if that one will continue. Tarkovsky's going to be very, very consistent for DEFCONs. I think we can read on what we've seen so far, an evolution of Forest playing under Nuno, which probably continues further under Ange. So maybe the Forest guys probably are not going to do it much, you would think. Not going to get as many DEFCONs on the halfway line as they will on the edge of the box, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Next up is Hasselbanki's win, says CN, which I have no idea what that means. It could be offensive, but I know him, so I don't think it is. Next up is Jack Stedman. Do you see any point in United sacking Amorim so early in the season? Would be similar to Ten Hag, where things wouldn't improve. Think we've been a bit unlucky, missed chances, tough fixtures. So the key here, Jack, is probably not what you think or what I think. It's what the players think. Will probably ultimately decide this. There have been some reports this week of some of the players beginning to be dissatisfied with some of the tactics and feeling like it's holding them back. Now, we don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, you're heading towards an inevitable conclusion. I think United should take in the next 4 fixtures. So before the next international break, or next 3 fixtures, sorry. So take in the fixtures against Chelsea at home, Brentford away, Sunderland at home. And frankly, if we're sitting here and United are still rocking about at kind of like a point per game after that, then yeah, I think it's probably writing on the wall, I think. So if the players have really got questions over him, with all the will in the world and all the best intentions of, yeah, we want to stick with him, philosophy, this, that, and the other. If the players ain't doing it, they don't believe in him, you're done. You're done. I think they should do the next 3 games and then reassess. If they lose heavily this weekend and there's more noises about from the players in the week that follows, we're heading towards a departure, and it'll be unavoidable if that's true. And I'm not saying that it is. Billy Taylor says, Adam Cleary made a great point. Salah and the Community Shield, that Liverpool want to overload opposite flank to give him less ball time so he can be more clinical when he needs to be. Have you noticed this? I think Wirtz has a natural lean to the left-hand side when we think of Ekiteke and even Isak once it's integrated. Again, better lean to the left-hand side. I watched the Chelsea game last night. I know David was at Anfield, so we'll speak to David about this sort of thing tomorrow on the Weekender, because I know Salah's data from last night is insane. Should have been expected goal involvement, I think, of just under 2. I've seen the goal. I've seen him hit the post, and I've seen the kind of deflected effort that diverted in off Robertson. So last night, plenty of opportunities. Mo's Mo, right? He's not been at his best, I don't think. I think that's clear. But what I'm told last night was, wow, again. So I'll see what David says tomorrow. In terms of the lean to the left-hand side, yes, quite possible. A lot of Liverpool players want to go towards that left-hand side. I do think there's also a correlation of what happens in terms of Liverpool's right back. If you've got like a Szoboszlai, is it going in field? Is it a Frimpong wants to maybe even go beyond? There is an impact to that as well. And that position is obviously not settled at the moment for Liverpool. Hasselbanki's win says, James, when you look at the Ballon d'Or list of contenders now compared to 20 years ago, do you think football has fallen off massively? No. This is interesting. Me and Nico on a Nico's Corner had a discussion, might even be a year ago now, of comparing, and I don't know who's been nominated for this year, I wouldn't have a clue, but comparing last year's list with the list from 20 years earlier. And you would say that the individual names from that list from 20 years earlier was like, wow, probably, yeah, of a higher caliber. I do also think, however, that standing out as an individual, so using individuality, which is what Clayton speaks about a lot, is becoming tougher because the game has become so structured, so tactical, so team orientated, rather than relying on the brilliance of one or two players to essentially just turn it on for you. So I think as well, I'd add on to that, things I've said about players like Kevin De Bruyne that I think will probably only appreciate just how good he was once he's finished. And it is difficult to judge the now versus the finished, I think. But I accept your point. I agreed with it from when we had that discussion last year. But I think a lot to do that is evolution of football. P9 says, hi James, want to wildcard this week so I can bring in Haaland and triple captain next week against Burnley. Is Burnley really that bad away from home, and is there better week to triple captain? So I certainly wouldn't rush to bring Haaland in this week. It's the worst fixture of the lot. Okay, so I wouldn't be, I know he's going up in price, people invest in, he did points. And of course, you know, you'd want him and you'd want to triple captain him next week. And I think, yes, I would do it as well. We are intending to do a Chip Talk podcast next week where we will look at some other triple captaincy opportunities as well. So not just from the weekend and next week, but we'll do more of a focus on that earlier in the week as well before the Carabao Cup ties. I suspect, yes, I probably would want a triple captain Haaland next week. As said, bringing him in now wouldn't rush. As for Burnley, recommend listening back to what I said in terms of discussion of them on Monday's podcast about you can put your narrative here either way. Because my narrative watching the game, watching Burnley versus Liverpool at weekend was, he's going to struggle here. Now, where Haaland will excel more than, say, Ekitike did or later Chiesa in the game, he's obviously crosses into the box. If they're that deep, he's obviously a stronger animal. But Burnley aren't short in terms of their aggression of defending the penalty area. They defended that area well. In a sense, they've got a better chance of stopping the space than most do, because they will be deeper. That's the most likely. Scott Parker's teams, bar the small period at Bournemouth when they first got promoted, have been pretty strong in terms of defensively difficult. The Fulham team that went down with him struggled at the top end. They were not bad defensively at all. And I suspect Burnley probably won't be that bad. And I suspect they'll go there, they'll make life difficult. I think Haaland will probably find it very, very difficult for space. Doesn't mean, by the way, he can't still do great. Because as mentioned again on Monday's pod, he only needs a couple of yards. If you get the press wrong in the first instance and that ball is fed in behind, he literally just needs a couple of yards. It's unstoppable. Now, Burnley probably don't go and press in the first instance to get themselves caught out. But it's still City against Burnley. There's plenty of ways for him to find opportunities. Also, you could look at last week and say Burnley defended Liverpool really well. Yeah, but that same Burnley also conceded 3 at Tottenham and 3 at Manchester United. Now, if I told you now City get 3 against Burnley, you'd probably go, well, that's par expectation, isn't it? And that's enough. So I'm not going to put anybody off. I think you can have your narrative on Burnley either way on that one, mate. I mean, Sinclair says, hi, James. In game week 6, I'll be taking Salah out to get Haaland in. Probably you and everybody else, Owen. Who do you think would be the best Salah replacement with an 8.5 million budget? 8.5 million budget. I'd have loved to have said to you Marmouche, but can't. Keep an eye on Saka news over the next week or so, because if he's going to be out longer than we expected, then I think there's every reason to say beyond the Newcastle game, it might well be an Arsenal player. But I think in terms of timing wise, in the short term, at that value, I would, if you've already got Semenyo, I'd probably go Bumo and chance it. And even think that even beyond the 2 games, Brentford, Sunderland, you could even be for a managerial change afterwards. So I think around about that value, I'd probably look at Brian Bumo, personally, would be my shout. Anurag says, hi James, do we have more Clash of Correspondent lined up this week, mate? No, not this week, mate. You've got the weekender tomorrow with myself and David. We'll be talking to Fallout primarily for the Champions League games, and we'll have a look at some more free hit drafts and some wildcard drafts for this week. Next week's clash of correspondence is Villa Fulham. Week after is Everton Palace, and then there's 2 more lined up in the international break: Brighton Newcastle and Forest v Chelsea. But there could even be something else added to that, possibly. But no. Are you not entertained? Is there not enough? Bellis says, thoughts on Simmons as an FP option, or too early to have a proper opinion? Looking to wildcard this week or next? Yeah, too early. I'd say I'd want him more in that 10 position for fantasy purposes. Probably not at 100% yet in terms of fitness level required, but that's being built into him quite quickly. You can tell there's a talented footballer there. It's not shown anything that's going to be massively threatening as yet. He does look like he's going to take corners that are right-footed in swingers, and Kudus will probably take it from the other sides. He's probably got half the set plays. He may get some free kicks and stuff as well. That's kind of to be confirmed between sort of him and Pedro Porro. So there's different routes on top of just the open play stuff. I think, look, Tottenham would probably be top of most people's tickers over the next 3 weeks. Brighton, Wolves, Leeds is an okay 3 fixtures. If you are happy to punt it short term and be prepared to move on, I don't mind it. If you're looking longer term, I'd be looking at something else at this moment. Connor Bickerton says, would you go Haaland and Palmer for Salah and either Ekiteke or Mateta for game week 6? No hits. Might be dependent on how we feel about Isak this time next week. I don't think Isak starts tomorrow. I'd then presume Isak probably starts Tuesday against Southampton. Then you're in a period where he's building himself up. He becomes probably a more legitimate threat to Ekiteke's minutes. So I think opportunity would probably be there to move Ekiteke on rather than Mateta. That said, Mateta's run from 6 is not great. So I think ultimately probably your decision will probably be defined by how you feel about Isak this time next week. But the moves are fine in principle. N says, hi James, how rotation prone do you think Donnarumma will be in the league this season? Is he a genuine option to rival Raya this season? And then it ends. I would say from a rotation perspective, it probably should be largely fine, but it's too early to tell, isn't it? It's played 1 game against United. Clearly he's taken over as first choice. How that relates to when City play Burnley at home and the likes, I have no idea. I want to give Trafford a game. I have no idea. No idea. I'd suspect the Burnley game is a bad example because Trafford will probably play against Huddersfield in the midweek before. So I'd imagine fine, but I'd probably strip that question a bit more naked and ask yourself, do you actually think that City will rival Arsenal defensively? My opinion on that would be no. Ricky Rich FPL says, hello James, who would you start between Porro and Estev? I'd go Pedro, mate. Although, I will add in, I have a sneaky that Burnley might well get a positive result this weekend. And he says that as a Murillo owner. King of Mandalore says, best defender to replace Nori. Already have Gabriel, considering Saliba, but would block Saka and Gyökeres game week 9. Tarkovsky or Senasai. Feels like the wrong week to jump into Tarkovsky, right? But I don't mind it. I'm sure he'll get DEFCONs at Liverpool. I think that was near certainty, actually. So I suppose he's probably a 2 or 3 pointer, isn't he? Realistically, probably a 3 pointer. Senasai. Fixtures still good, aren't they? I think timing wise, I'd probably go Senasai personally from those options. I think with Saliba, just got to factor in that Mosquera's done really well in the 3 games that he's played. Do they need to rush Saliba back in? I don't think we're doubting that Saliba's first choice. He's very much on my radar, but again, I don't think that decision should necessarily be made now. Also, I understand you probably don't want to make too many changes defensively, so you feel like you want to get the one that's right longer term. So if you think that's Tarkovsky, go and get him. Go and get him. Timing-wise, probably feels like it's Senasai. One benefit of that is opens up a little bit of money for you to maybe consider some other things. Taylor says, would you start Grealish or Elliott? I think Elliott will start for Villa. on Sunday, so I would go Elliott. Darren Malloy says, yo, James, how's the form? Do you reckon the form over fixture debate is more valid now that player could return more 2 points in any fixture if they are in form? Not sure I really understand the question, Darren. Sorry, buddy. Do you reckon the form over fixture debate is more valid now that player could return more than 2 points in any fixture if they're in form? I'm not sure I understand the point, Darren. I'm sorry. Fixtures versus form. Fixtures can breed form. Many of you know I'm a bit of a fixture head, right? So that's my preference is always going to go down that line of route. I.e., not wanting to sell Watkins when I see Sunderland and Burnley and 2 of the next 3, but I want to watch Villa Sunday and I'll make a reassessment after that. Dan says on free hit with Salah and VVD, who would be your third Liverpool? Thinking Ekiteke, as we know he starts, wondered who you would go for. Yeah, probably. And just thinking about alternative striking options this week and who would stand out. Minor minutes concerned for Mateta based on some of Oliver Glasner's comments, but I'm pretty sure with a free midweek afterwards he would play. Muniz also falls into a line of restricted minutes. I don't think Brentford at home is necessarily better than Leeds at home, although probably higher probability of more goals in that game than there was last week. Alternative forwards this week. Wood at Burnley. Meh. Bowen. Meh. Watkins. I probably would go Watkins on a free hit, but that's me. Wolves, Leeds, there's nothing to look at. So, yeah, forward options, obviously Yokkers, Haaland playing each other feels like a no. So, yes, I would go Ekiteke, yeah. Yeah, I think so. We'll see what I come up with for the pod tomorrow. The Blubber King says, hey, James, what do you think of Dango and Elanga? To Casado and Seaman, I presume it's meant to be Semenyo. Or is getting rid of Dorgu more important? No, getting rid of Dorgu is not more important. That could be pretty good for 6 and 7 for you, actually. Yeah, seems fine and reasonable, personally. Colin Johnson says, hi, mate. Bench boost 5 with Dubravka have 3 Forest, Concert, Anderson, VVD, Porro. Not quite sure what the question is, mate. You asked me if it's fine to bench boost with those players. I'm going to say, yeah, it's fine, mate. Daniel Cullerton says, who come up with the messy intro music for the pod? And was any other clips in the running to be picked? That's a Suj question, because Suj did it years ago when we started. So it's all Suj's work. I think he used some form of AI back in 2017 to come up with it, I think. So I don't think there was. No, Messi's the GOAT, mate. John Ejugu says, please start Enzo or Muniz. It was also called a John. I don't know if you're the same John. Asked me on Twitter about Muniz or someone this week. And I was like, I don't know why if you have Muniz, you wouldn't be starting him this week. That's beyond my understanding, actually. So, yeah, I'd be playing Muniz, mate. Lewis Hatton says, hi, James. Hope you're well, mate. Would you start Dubravka ahead of Sanchez this weekend? Probably not. Just more trust in Chelsea, right? Ultimately, well, actually, that's probably not fair on Burnley. The better team. If you went down the bookies and they said to you, who's more likely to win this weekend, Chelsea or Burnley? Do you know what? I'm not sure what the answer would be. But I suspect it might be Chelsea. Dan says, will Palmer be in your top 3 captains this weekend? Don't know. Honest answer, Dan. Don't know. I can tell you number 1 will be Salah. That's very clear for me. The rest is up for debate. I think it's pretty much wide open beyond that. Like, I still don't know who I'm going to captain this week. It's probably between Semenyo, Gakpo, Watkins. I've not made that decision. I intend to by the end of today, so I'm kind of clearing my mind for tomorrow. Wide open. I think probably not. I'm trying to think if Palmer was in my team, if I'd do it. Just think the fact he held his groin towards the end of the game last night, it's just a 3-day turnaround. I'm sure he plays, by the way. Probably no from me. I'm sure he'll be in the 10, though. I'm sure, unless Maresca gives us some bad news. Next up is King of Mandalore. Best captain for this week without Haaland or Salah. Palmer screaming to me, especially because of form, but worried on a benching. Have Wood and Watkins too. Yeah, nothing to add on kind of the question for Dan. Yeah, nothing to add. Greg says, hi, James. Hope you had a look at an uber cheap defence on wildcard. Oh, sorry. Have you had a look at an uber cheap defence on wildcard? Burnley, Sunderland, Leeds, 4 million players. No, would hold no interest to me. I mean, I could do, but I would be more interested, I think, in spending more rather than less defensively, based on what we've seen so far this season. So, no, wouldn't be for me, mate. STR says, bench boost, Dubravka, Estevo, Murillo, Reinders. What did I say? Estevo? Didn't mean to say Estev. If Murillo out, get Palace defence and bench boost. Cheers, mate. Dubravka, Estev, Murillo, Reinders. I can't see your team. I can't see the rest of it. But I'd ask you to have a glance at Gameweek 8 as a potential alternative. Guppy says, hi, James. How many minutes do you see for Cole Palmer going forward? What does that mean? That is in how many minutes for the weekend? Well, probably 80-ish, I suppose, would be my best guess. Beyond that, more. Carabao Cup next week. So would expect decent minutes for the fixture against Brighton. Tell you what I can do. Just have a quick look, because I should probably do this myself. The Champions League game afterwards is Benfica, isn't it? After the fixture against Brighton in 6. That's on the Tuesday evening. And then there's a 4-day gap to Liverpool. He won't play at Lincoln. So, yeah, strong. Strong. Other side of the international break, strong. Spacing is not too bad there as well. Strong, mate. Ultimately, they're talisman. He's their best player. So as long as he's fit, he'll play the majority of games. But we shouldn't rule out the possibility that he could be rotated for some of the easier ones. So certainly accept that. Spacing of days will be very, very important. Next up is Taylor. Do you think Salah and Semenyo captaincy is quite close currently on Semenyo? No. No, I don't. If I had Salah, it wouldn't be a debate for me this week in terms of captaincy. I get it. Early kickoff, Salah v Gandhi, Merseyside derby, still be mode. Still be mode. Guppy says, thoughts on Foden's an FP option from 6. Possibly depends a little bit on tonight, then Sunday. If there's good minutes tonight and then Sunday, then I think you can feel pretty confident in the minutes against Burnley in 6, under an assumption he probably gets rested at Huddersfield in the Cup beforehand. But what's the impact when Marmoush is fit? Don't know. We anticipate that will be Gameweek 8 at the moment, but there is a small chance it could be 7. No from me at this moment. Julius Knit, says, hi James, do you think João Pedro or Palmer's minutes are safe enough for captaincy? Yeah, probably, but I just wouldn't go down that route, I don't think. Eros Milicevic says, hi James, a question about your wildcard 4 bench boost 5 team from last Friday. Before I read the rest of the question, I can't remember that, mate. What would your plan have been going forward for Haaland in 6, free hit or transfers? An Arsenal attacker in 7 and Palmer in 9. So the plan on what I can tell you from that team last week, the plan was set to go Salah to Haaland in 6, as obviously as part of 2 free transfers. Wouldn't be desperate for the Arsenal attacker in 7 necessarily, because I think then there's the 2 quite ugly fixtures afterwards for attacking players, Fulham and Crystal Palace. They just never scream at you for decent fixtures for attacking players. So I wouldn't be desperate to have it in for 7 personally. Palmer in 9 would always be part of the plan. It's part of my plan now. So I can't remember my whole team from last week, mate, because it's gone. It's out of my mind. But yeah, essentially that run. Guppy says, who are the threats to Yokere's minutes? Could be a captaincy option in 7. Question. It could be. The threat's Havertz primarily, isn't it? Depends on his fitness, mate. Atlas Forland says, who do you prefer to buy this week? Senesai or Lacroix? Maybe someone else. Depends a little bit on your short-term view versus your long-term view, because I think I've actually got Palace bottom my ticker over the next 5, despite the fact they play West Ham this week. So if it's a short-term view, Bournemouth sit 5 on that ticker over the next 5. So if it's short-term view, Sanesai. If it's a really longer-term view, I don't mind getting Lacroix at all, because I think come game week 10, that swings again back Palace's way. So the answer there probably lies in short-term decision or long-term decision. Dan says, for this week specifically, who do you think is closest to 90 from Spurs attackers? Kudos. Kudos, I would assume. We're playing Doncaster next week, right? So I don't think there's going to be heavy rotation this weekend. I think pretty much the second team will play against Doncaster on Wednesday. I see no reason why Kudos, despite playing pretty much did he play the whole game at West Ham? It was so easy at the end, I lost interest. But I see no reason why Kudos wouldn't start again, and he probably plays close to 90 again, I think. It's not fantasy. I keep saying this. Again, I'll repeat what I said on Monday and said last week. If you want to go in very short term because the fixtures are very attractive, fine. But even with them fixtures, it's a punt. He does not look like scoring. The only time he has looked like scoring in all of his games for Tottenham, which includes the pre-season friendlies, was in the 10-15 minutes he moved into the 10 position against West Ham. And I said on Monday I had an inkling that he might play that position against Villarreal. He didn't. Right, he just doesn't look like scoring from the right at all. I wouldn't be going for any of the others at the moment. Other than, it's similar. I suppose if I had to punt Simmons or Kudus at this moment, I would punt Simmons. But then you'd asked it from a minutes perspective, and that's way more at risk, I think, for this weekend. George Picrablu says, hello, James. Which do you prefer? Wildcard 6 with Arsenal defence and Dyer João Pedro versus triple captain 6, Haaland Forest defence, Bumo Evan Ilson. Hang on. Wildcard 6 versus triple captain 6. Yeah, but wildcard is 15 decisions, mate. So if you think wildcard 6 is the best decision for your team, for me, that supersedes the triple captaincy because there will be other opportunities. Ultimately, I can't see the rest of your team, but it's way more important to get the wildcard right and get the triple captaincy right. Let me tell you that. Aku says, hi James, my rank is almost 8 million and consider inverts to Salah for free since I don't have any good captain options apart from Wood and Watkins, and then wildcard next week, reasonable. If you are wildcarding next week, yes. Otherwise, it would probably be a no from me. Ayub Seller says, hi James, with everyone fit, what's your Spurs best 11 and does Decky get in it? Everyone fit. Vicario, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Doggy. I think it probably is going to stay kind of 4-3-3-ish at the moment. So very similar to what we've got at the moment. So it depends on the opponent. So for me, where we're going to have more of the ball, I would want Benson Crow as a single pivot and Sarr and Bergvall as aggressive 8, being quite offensive. In a game more like Saturday, where I'm sure Brighton will have spells of the ball, I would want Paulinho to play and probably play with 110. I think in that sort of fixture, probably Sarr would be more suitable than Bergvall, but it'd be rough to leave him out. It's been man of match in terms of the awards over the last 2 games. And then it's Simmons left, Kudos right, and up front, take your pick. Difficult to say with Kolo Muani at this stage whether he'd fit in or not. Solanke's still over Richarlison when fully fit. He's clearly well off that at the moment. If you are picking a 10, assuming we're still ruling Maddison out of this, then yes, Kulusevski could potentially operate as that player. But he's got somewhere to go, I think, probably to get back into a best 11. But ultimately, with the amount of games that we'll hopefully have this year, it probably will be difficult to ever know from week to week definitively what Tottenham's strongest 11 is. Frank's clearly he's going to change tactics quite a lot as well. Majed says, hi James, who would you start out of? Rutter, Estev, Dorgo, Rutter. Yeah. Home fixture. Think he starts. Straightforward. Leon Barker says, do you think Ballard comes straight back in? Probably not. No, probably not. Guppy says, Gabriel's starting to get DEFCON. Freak incident or a tactical shift? Did he hit it at Liverpool, did he? The hardest away game, so it's not a surprise if he did. I can't recall. And he just about hit it at the end, didn't he, against Nottingham Forest? Again, 3-0 up. Went quite defensive. Forest are evolving as a team in terms of the amount of ball they have. Wouldn't read too much into it. But I think he's liable to be someone who, subject to game state, is very capable of getting them. Almost the earlier Arsenal score and the earlier they get in front, the better the possibility. Because they're happy to go deep on occasion. We know that. So wouldn't be surprised. There might be something in it in terms of him being a little bit more aggressive with Saliba absent to protect against Mascara. As I said, has done very well. There could be a small relation to that. It's probably more down to opponents. I wouldn't read too much into it. Yes, he will hit some. He's not going to hit them to the level of Tarkovsky. But we shouldn't be surprised if Gabriel hits DEFCON in the next couple of games. City maybe not so much because of how they are stylistically. But again, if Arsenal are winning at Newcastle, we should expect him to hit it, I think. Cole Sliver says, hi James, thoughts on Wirtz to Semenyo? I think Newcastle will rotate, be tired, play 5 at the back, and Bournemouth will be favourites to win. Yeah, but Wirtz is very much on the chopping block for me next week. I've wrestled last night with the idea a little bit of going Wirtz to Palmer now. And that's not beyond possibility. The main problem with that is pretty much it cuts me off for Haaland completely. If I'd rather just wait the extra week, I think, because then I could maybe go like Wirtz to King and I can force Haaland in. But yeah, he's on chopping block for me. So is Bournemouth's fixture specifically better than Liverpool's this week? Questionable. But I agree. I mean, if you said to me now, captain Semenyo or Wirtz this week, I've got both. It would be Semenyo over Wirtz quite comfortably. So I don't mind it. It'll get you ahead again because the money's going to keep coming for Semenyo when you look at Leeds away for Bournemouth next as well. Next up is Anton Puric says, hey James, for draft mode this game week, Totti, Zinchenko or Agbado. Presumably it's Totti, Gomez, Agbado. Probably Agbado, despite Bradley's little concerns on COTC, because he's probably the one for DEFCON. Carl Fernandez says, hi James, I'm currently sitting on 2 free transfers. I'm thinking about wildcard. I currently have problems. Watkins, Ekiteke, Bumo, Bruno Fernandes, Murillo. I want to get Haaland in. Worth the wildcard now? No. For me, wait till next week. I don't think this is a great week. I don't actually particularly think next week is that brilliant. I tell you what I would say to people, just a bit of an advice for those who are planning on using a chip for game week 6. We had quite a deep discussion about both of these options on our Patreon Q&A on Monday about wildcarding in 6 and free hitting in 6. I just want, for those of you doing it, like, good luck, it's fine if that's what you've chosen as your path. I just want you to ask yourself that if Haaland was injured, would you still do it? That's all. And it's not to say that it's still wrong, but I just want you to consider that from the perspective that if you activate on Saturday, which is particularly for the wildcarders, don't do that if you're on free hit. I'd strongly advise waiting. Next week, you shouldn't need the money for the free hit in 6 anyway, I don't think, right? So free hit should definitely wait. If you're on wildcard, I completely get that you'll want to activate and obviously take the price changes that happen Saturday night. But what would it mean for you if Haaland did get injured on Sunday? Would you wish you hadn't done it? Now, if the answer is still, yeah, no problem, please proceed. But I just think you need just give that a little bit of thought. I'm just asking people to second guess themselves and ask themselves, it's not even to say under this circumstance that you shouldn't do it for Haaland and other things. I get that. Just think about it. Just ask yourself, if Haaland wasn't available, would I still be doing this? And just act accordingly off that basis to maybe wait till after City have played Arsenal. I'm sure Haaland won't play at Huddersfield. He shouldn't do anyway in the League Cup. Yahia Fazani says, how do you think the Barca Newcastle game will go? Score predictions knowing Numal and Balde won't play. I think Newcastle are favourites now with the bookies. I wouldn't be at all surprised to win tonight. And Newcastle twatted PSG 4-1 there last year, right? So, I mean, going to be some atmosphere tonight. Really looking forward to it. David said to me, do you want me to watch City Napoli so you can watch Newcastle? I said, just watch Newcastle. It's the game everyone wants to watch tonight, I think. So, yeah, we'll look forward to that. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Nishal says, use 1 free transfer this week to bench boost before wildcard 6 or accumulate the free transfers for post wildcard. If you don't know what you want to do, I would say wait and accumulate would be better, ideally. Jemima Unicorn says, hi, no Salah or Semenyo. Best captain options, Wood, Pedro, Fernandez are likely choices. From that lot, probably Wood. Ronamram says, any significant injury news from Champions League? Not that I'm aware. Tottenham, I think, came through all right the other night. Arsenal, I think there was a little bit of minor concern about Gyökeres and Marino. Both picked up, I didn't see the game, but both picked up head injuries, but I think both carried on, so they're expected to be fine. I watched Chelsea last night. I said Palmer did kind of appear to grab his groin towards the end of the game again, but suggested to Maresca he was fine. Chalobah took a heavy whack to the shoulder that I'd be a little bit conscious of because adrenaline might have got him through the last few minutes. I'd be wary of that. Can't comment from the Liverpool game. I'm sure David will update us tomorrow if he has any concerns. Jemima Unicorn I've done, and Broneman says Pedro, Haaland or Isak captain this week. It can't be Isak, mate. I would go Pedro over Haaland, I think. Vorfar says, is there a problem with FPL? Because in the mobile app I have one free transfer, but on the web app it's 0. I wish I could share a screenshot. Okay, there are, I don't use the app. There are, to my understanding, a lot of issues with the app. My best advice to people is do not be clever. Okay, so here's something I'd advise. Because I've heard stories of, my mate keeps making transfers and it keeps saying they've got one free transfer. Yeah, great. Go and check on the website what the website says to you. Right, so if you make one free transfer, go and see what the website says. Right, if it says you ain't got any free transfer, your next move's a -4, I'd take the website as gospel. I would not be using that app. I scream that every single year. I wouldn't trust it as far as I could throw it, and I'd try and throw it pretty far actually. So please check against the website. Don't try and be clever. Don't try and game the system, because if you think, I'll keep getting one free transfers and then rock out and after deadline, oh shit, I took a -20. Yeah, don't try and game it, would be my advice. Howard Green says, is the People's Poll likely to return sooner or later? It's not in the bin, Howard, not at all. It's just in terms of schedule things, we've done some different things recently. Obviously, introduction of the Weekender. I've been keen to get this stream off of Fridays because the questions get too fucking repetitive, quite frankly. So Clash to Correspondence can be sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm prepared to be more flexible on that this year. It's not off the table. Not at all. Next week, I would like to do something that's chip related. It feels like it's probably the right time to just have a little bit of a refresh for people to kind of look over this period building towards December. There's going to be a bit of a Palace conversation that builds as well following their victory in the Cup in relation to the fixtures in December. So just kind of want to recap that again next week. So no, it's not off the table. What I would say, Howard, is on our Money in Football podcast on Patreon, what we've done more and more is break that into smaller chunks of topics. So some of the things that we may have done in more detail on the People's Poll are quite often finding their way into that space at the moment. But no, it's not gone, but it's not necessarily returning as a regular either. I mean, this week you've had, in terms of content, I obviously got Mark on yesterday to talk about Forest. Had I not done that, we probably would have had a People's Poll podcast this week, right? So it's not out the thinking. It's just okay, what we got this week? No, we got a space for one. Okay, let's put a vote out to the people and see what they want to discuss. So no, it's not gone. It's not off the table. It's just the way the schedule's worked with a lot of COTCs. Having Mark on this week, wants to do a chip piece next week that it's not in the schedule at the moment. It may well return the week after, Howard. Russell Cottle says, what to do with Cunha? Already have Semenyo. I'd consider Boomo. Yeah, that might not look great for this week. But if you wanted to invest in United, them fixtures, the next two, I think after this week, pretty good. So I wouldn't mind that at all. Failing that, you're downgrading significantly probably. Or maybe you're setting up for Haaland for next week, for example. Harry Scott says, hi James, I have 4 free transfers, but lineup feels okay this week. No Haaland, Semenyo or Arsenal defence though. Would you use a few of the transfers to move it around or wait for next week and roll again? Probably more power in rolling to leave your Haaland option open Harry. Mind you, you're saying you've got 4 free transfers. What a position to be in. Under that circumstance, Harry, I would probably be sticking Semenyo in then and just leave the rest wait for the moment. Kalen says, hi James, thanks for the amazing content. Would you prioritise getting City players in 6 or Arsenal players in 7? Don't want to wildcard until later on. I don't want to say Arsenal for 7 just to end up like taking a hit for Rangers and Haaland next week, right? It's not impossible. But for me, Arsenal is the answer. Sean says, hi James, thoughts on going Bruno to Semenyo this weekend if I plan to do it sooner or later anyway, 2 free transfers. Yeah, fine. Just consider, as I said, we United those next 2 fixtures. I think pretty good. Simon Kurtz has brought in double Brighton midfield on a wild card last week. Minter and Rutter. And I've lost my space in the bloody questions. I've found you. Have Richarlison and considering Kudus too? No. Can you promise me a goal fest on Saturday in Brighton? Probably not, mate. No. Don't expect one. Although I would say that there's been a little bit of a history of Brentford and Brighton games having quite a number of goals in them. It was 4-2 at Brentford last year. I want to say there was a 3-3 at Brighton the year before, although Hertzler wasn't manager. The correlation there is Thomas Frank, obviously. But I wouldn't expect it based on what I've seen from the 2 teams so far, mate. GB Fancy Football says, hey James, love the content as always. Quick question, would you say the Tottenham defence has gotten lucky so far? Expected XG to goals conceded? Or is simply Frank getting things right defensively? The answer's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, we're clearly outperforming the data. Although a lot of that actually is from the Bournemouth game. I think Bournemouth had an XG of near 2. Clearly, there's been a real focus to improve the defence. So the answer's somewhere in the middle. Frank's working on it. It's getting better, clearly. But yes, also at the same time, we should have conceded more than 1 goal, right? That's very clear. So the answer's somewhere in the middle. Sid says, already have Salah and Haaland. I'm missing Arsenal defence and Gyökeres. Can I keep Salah, skip Palmer, and just get Arsenal folks in 7? Of course you can, because you can't have everyone. I mean, look, you can put teams together that's got Salah, Haaland, and Palmer, but then one in Gyökeres, Gabriel, and Saka, and all these others becomes very, very difficult, right? So prioritising. But yeah, if Arsenal's going to be a priority for you, then yeah, sure, Palmer. I would think one way of doing that, maybe Sid, would maybe be this would be beyond people's thinking for many at the moment, but sell Haaland in 9 to get Palmer back. I've got to get him. Yeah. Well, one of the things I keep thinking is he'll be going for me again in 9 because that's what I would want to do. Is get Palmer in for that week. But then that's also, could that be a rotation week? Could be, possibly. We've gone 1 o'clock, guys. So tell you what, I can see. I'm going to go down John Villa's question. I can see on screen. That's going to be the last one I cover. Ben Thompson, Pillows Pen says, hi James, if you could free hit in 6, do you think avoiding Haaland altogether is fine? There's no way I would avoid him if I was free hitting in 6. No way. Ben Thompson says, looking at transfer plans, I like my next 4 to be Murillo to Gabriel, Wirtz to Palmer, Bruno to Saka, Watkins to Gyökeres. These price drops are starting to hurt. Any alternative to have free Arsenal? Might depend on Saka's fitness. I think the easiest alternatives considered with Arsenal is rather than a Saka is like a Saliba once he's back in the team. And those options are open for me at the moment, Ben. But yeah, your line of thinking transfer is very similar to mine, mate. Rob McIntosh says, hi James, do you think there's any chance of a Kolo Muani start at the weekend? Also any news on Dom? Dom certainly won't start. I would be surprised if Muani started. I would expect, considering Richarlison didn't start at West Ham, and I'm sure Richarlison won't start next midweek, I would expect Richarlison to start, and I would expect Muani to start against Doncaster next midweek. Rob says, also, I'm probably going against Haaland until 13. Is that a mental idea? It is, Rob, but I might be joining you. We'll see. I'm not going to make any promises. Let's see what next week brings. Calais Hosta says, hi mate, the plan is to wildcard after Gameweek 7. Game Week 6 bench boost or triple captain Haaland. Don't see anyone as worthy of a triple captain later on, but getting rid of bench boost would be nice also. Do you think Haaland triple captain Game Week 6 is the best option? Yes, probably, but I can't see what your bench options would be. And I think if I had a really, really strong bench boost option, I'd be more keen to get that out of the way, knowing that there will be other triple captaincy opportunities. Okay. Essentially, you don't need to plan for it so much, right? You just keep planning your captain, plan your captain. Something might land one week, you go, yeah, this is the one. Okay. So if you're in a position where you've got a strong bench boost and you're like, yeah, this is the week's bench boost, I'd get that out of the way first, personally. John Villas says, hi, James. Just wanted to know if there's a community chat on Patreon for your guys' show. I just signed up. Would love to chat with other FPL lovers. It certainly is, John. So from Basic Plus tier, you have access. I didn't know this was going to be John's question, but it's a perfect way to finish. SAC is available from Basic Plus tier. So that's a bit like a Discord. We have channels for every Premier League club, different fantasy games like Telegraph, Gaffer, Gaffer Scotland, UCL Fantasy. The Matchday Live channel is the place to be over the weekend, which is great. So yeah, Slack's a little bit like Discord. That's available from Basic Plus tier. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. No ad content available from Basic tier. I said access to Slack and one of the podcasts each week from Basic Plus. Intermediate will get you access to all the podcasts every week and one bit of additional advanced video content from myself. And at Advanced, you get the warts and all, which includes things like Talking Tactics, said later on, Team News stream tomorrow. Nico's Corner, normally out on a Monday. Had away days from West Ham, went out on Tuesday, and the Midweek FPL Dilemma normally goes out on a Wednesday. There's other bits I do, such as What the Numbers Say as well. That's all available from Advanced tier, and also a Zoom call, which apologies to my patrons for having to cancel that yesterday. That's rescheduled for 4:30 p.m. UK time tomorrow. Again, if you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. DMs open if anybody wants to ask me any questions about Patreon or general life stuff. Please don't send me a screenshot of your FPL team and ask me false. For those who I didn't get through to the questions, I realised that's a lot of you. Many apologies. Feel free to tag me at Planet FPL Pod on Twitter or on Blue Sky, and I'll happily get to your questions before the end of the day. For those on YouTube, please smash a like. It'd be hugely appreciated. Subscribe to the channel. And for those on the audio, a 5-star review does go a really long way. It would be hugely appreciated. And for you too, cue music, please, Manchild.